Among the flurry of executive orders President Trump signed on Inauguration Day was one saying the federal government recognizes only two sexes, male and female, and that sex is determined at birth. Mr. Trump and Republican congressional candidates made rolling back federal protections for transgender people a big issue. By one count, they spent nearly $215 million on network TV ads on the issue, much of it focusing on gender-affirming care for minors. Despite all this attention, a new study by researchers at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health finds that gender-affirming medications are very rarely prescribed to minors. Lindsay Dawson is the director of LGBTQ health policy at KFF, which is an independent source of information on national health issues. Lindsay, this study in JAMA Pediatrics looked at gender-affirming medications and prescriptions for them to adolescents. What did it find?
The study found that prescriptions for gender-affirming care, hormone therapy, and puberty blockers are actually very rare in adolescents. And this isn't surprising. It echoes other findings we've seen and really counters some of the misinformation and disinformation we've seen about being trans, being widespread and prolific. That really just is not the case. And this study is more evidence that speaks to that.
In previous studies, they looked at gender-affirming surgery, and what did they find?
Gender-affirming surgery is effectively not occurring among minors. If you really scour the evidence, you will find occasionally minors are accessing this type of care. This is rare, and it is in cases where minors are experiencing really prolonged gender dysphoria. And these conversations and decisions are made very carefully between minors, providers, and parents. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a careful and thoughtful, iterative type of care.
Why all this political attention to what sounds like a very small number?
It's a really small number of people, and even among that small group, smaller shares are accessing gender-affirming medical care. But these issues have been deeply politicized and polarized, particularly in recent years in states and then in the campaign among the now Trump administration in particular.
And why do you think that is? Why make transgender people sort of the focus of these political attacks?
So much of this rests on stigma and discrimination and misinformation and disinformation, and really using that to fuel partisan debate and polarization.
How safe are these practices? How safe are gender-affirming medications? How safe is gender-affirming surgery?
So as with any medical intervention, there are risks and benefits to it. That is the truth when you take an Advil for a headache, of course, and as with anything else. There are risks to gender-affirming care, but those are carefully thought about. Many of them can be mediated, and they're really long, thoughtful decisions that are made in a sort of group decision between young people and parents and providers.
Mr. Trump's executive order on this matter this week. A lot of what he says, he's framing this as protecting women, as trying to help women. His executive order says efforts to eradicate the biological reality of sex fundamentally attack women by depriving them of their dignity, safety, and well-being. What do you make of that?
I mean, it really follows in the footsteps of many of the debates that we saw with reproductive care and is aimed at limiting access to services for a group of people based on sex and gender lines.
Does this give us any hint or any clues as to future actions and future policies of the Trump administration?
So the executive order that came out on his first day in office was quite broad, and in many ways it was nonspecific. There were hints in it that the administration might seek to make good on campaign promises to limit gender-affirming care, but this executive order does not do that. There need to be additional actions, potentially rulemaking, which is a long process, and we, of course, may see litigation as well. So this isn't a change that will necessarily happen overnight and not something that the executive order does.
What's the effect, or what do you think the effect is on transgender people, of all this, the discussion about it, the focus on it, and especially transgender adolescents?
There are trans youth who are denied access to medically necessary care that could prevent significant mental health problems, potentially even suicidality. And then there's the more cultural problem for LGBTQ people more generally, when there is significant animus to the LGBTQ community.
Lindsay Dawson of KFF, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.